What's going on, everybody? It's your boy KRYPTONIAN SAIYAN here, bringing you guys another Chainsaw Man chapter review for chapter 118. And now that chapter 118 is done in the books, man, do we got a lot to talk about, because that sussy Baka Fujimoto just subverted our expectations once again in this latest manga chapter. Last chapter, we ended off with us wondering what was going to happen to Denji. Did Fujimoto just reject this man's main character plot armor in favor of Mitaka, or was Denji still safe all along? Well, Fujimoto wasted no time in showing us that not only is Denji alive, but he's now on Yoru's radar, and the worst part is that we see the net starting to close in on Denji. Part 2 of Chainsaw Man has introduced 3 of the 4 horsemen of devils and name dropped the final horseman a few chapters ago. Nayuta, the control devil; Yoru, the war devil; Fami, the famine devil; Yoshida directly name dropped the death devil. As Doctor Strange said in Multiverse of Madness, things just got out of hand, and I'm all for the chaos that is coming. So the chapter opens up with Yoru controlling Mitaka's body with that smug smile on her face, because in her mind she's just achieved her end game. She still thinks that she made Denji into a weapon. However, this leads to a hilarious scene where Denji keeps repeating the words Denji's spinal cord sword, and Yoru shouts the words back at him several times, which leads to Denji, being the dimwit that he is, Denji thinks, wow, this must be some kind of a send-off greeting, or maybe Mitaka's just being weird. So Denji just puts his hand on Mitaka's head and tells Mitaka, hey, Mitaka's spinal cord sword. At that point in time, Yoru probably had a moment where she said, wow, this is what that feels like. But jokes aside, this is that moment that likely put Denji on Yoru's radar. She's going to pay closer attention to him now. After Denji walks away, Yoru begins to wonder why it is that Denji couldn't be turned into a weapon, but Mitaka is the one asking the 300 IQ questions, which is she's wondering if Denji doesn't like her and was just lying to her the whole time, and she tries to play it off like she doesn't care that Denji seemingly doesn't like her back, but we all know the truth. She's a tsundere. Whatever she's saying, you know she feels the exact opposite. This leads to Yoru basically shrugging off what Mitaka said by stating that they share emotions now, so she at least knows something good about the situation, and that they'll have to take their time to win over Denji's affections, which does 4 things to the story. Number 1, it follows the pattern of what we saw with Makima, where she had to wear Denji down over time in her quest to place Denji under control, and it looks like this is what Yoru's planning to do the exact same. Only this time she's taking her sweet time to win Denji over so she can make him into a weapon. The other thing it does is that it sets up the obvious narrative that since Denji has Pochita's heart, he can't be turned into a weapon, which is something we're likely going to continue to see moving forward, because this won't be the last time that Yoru tries to make Denji into a weapon. Thirdly, it gives Denji cover as Chainsaw Man, because as Yoru said, her power can turn a boy into a weapon if that boy has fallen in love with Mitaka. In the future, if Denji still isn't turned into a weapon, Yoru isn't going to think, hey, this guy's the Chainsaw Man. She's going to be thinking, man, Mitaka really sucks at seducing people, which, as we saw a couple of chapters ago with that word salad that she was spouting out, that's definitely going to be the case. And then lastly, at number 4, Denji might just have something special about him as a hybrid, because we've seen that devils don't exactly seem very fond of hybrids. In part 1 of Chainsaw Man, we saw devils complain about the blood of hybrids when they had to taste them, and Makima is the most notable exception to what we saw in Chainsaw Man part 1 when it comes to devils and devil hybrids having this weird connection where the powers don't work 100% on them. But Makima is one of the strongest characters in the series, so it does make sense, but even Makima needed the right conditions in order to try and control Denji. After Yoru goes to sleep on the bed, much to Mitaka's displeasure, since Yoru didn't take a bath before going to bed, we see Mitaka in deep reflection as she thinks over what happened with Denji, and she comes to the conclusion that Denji doesn't like her, and we get this great panel where we see her pissed off as she declares her hate for Denji, and on the opposite panel we see Denji with that goofy face of someone who you just can't bring yourself to hate. Denji starts making all these plans with Mitaka for their date, saying that they're gonna spend 2,000 yen in order to watch movies non-stop until 2 a.m., basically recreating that whole date that he had with Makima, and that leads to Mitaka being a total buzzkill by saying, hey, it's cheaper to just rent a movie. And when Denji asked her if she had a VCR, my bones ached a little bit, and I swear I got gray hairs on my face, because it made me, as someone who grew up in the 90s, realize that some of you guys watching this video, you might be too young to even know what a VCR is. Congratulations, Fujimoto. In one panel, you made my entire body age 40 years. However, my corny jokes aside, this chapter does take a turn turn for the darker. It isn't just rom-com scenarios, because we learned that Nayuta does not play around at home with Denji. Anyone thinking that she was just going to be some sweet, lovable little girl that Denji was raising to be the opposite of Makima, Fujimoto just reminded you that this sweet little girl is still the reincarnated control devil. She's nothing to play around with. According to Denji, they have set house rules, and if Mitaka comes over and if she breaks them, it's not going to be Denji that's kicking her out. Breaking these rules, it's going to mean death. And once Denji says this, our favorite class president, who has the most punchable face ever, is shown eavesdropping, and he repeats what we just heard Denji saying to Mitaka, which means that Denji's date with Mitaka isn't just going to be him having a third wheel in the form of Nayuta being there physically or Yoru inside of Mitaka, but we might even see the class president make himself known, because as they say, curiosity kills the cat, and this fellow right here, he looks pretty feline right now. I think the biggest thing we can take away from this chapter is the fact that Fujimoto continues to use dramatic irony in a very excellent way by taking advantage of what we know about the series that someone like Mitaka doesn't know in universe. We know that she's about to meet the reincarnated control devil, and there's a chance that we see Yoru make that connection at some point in time. It does make things more interesting because it gives the reader more investment to notice how Mitaka navigates some of these pitfalls that we know are going to be waiting for. Even though this was only a 15-page chapter, very short by Fujimoto's standards, there was enough tension in this chapter which is either right in your face in the form of Denji and Yoru's interactions, or it's very subtle to the point where if you don't pay attention to it, you miss it outright altogether. In part 2 of Chainsaw Man, Fujimoto more than once has taken to mirroring things, where things that he shows at the start of the chapter ties in at the very end of the chapter. It's not every single chapter in part 2 of the story, but it's enough that we see it's intentional on his behalf. At the end of the chapter, we clearly see Denji is referring to Nayuta. However, we never see her, or at least Fujimoto makes you think that we never saw her. Remember how in the last chapter review, I kept saying I was looking for some type of sign that Nayuta was watching because I was worried about Denji? Well, at the start of the chapter, what's one of the things we see? We see crows once again, and they're outside of that apartment, which is a strong indication given that Nayuta was directly mentioned in this chapter in an indirect manner when Denji talked about all the house rules and making sure that all of them were followed. Nayuta was watching this whole scene play out through the windows of Mitaka's apartment building and potentially listening in as well, because as we all know, the control devil can take over the eyes and the hearing of lesser life forms like crows. Nayuta is shaping up to be a huge problem, and the slow reveal to her character in part 2 of Chainsaw Man is going to be very memorable when it actually happens. This is brilliant setup right here. The other thing we have here is the fact that Yoru directly told Mitaka to avoid the famine devil at all costs, but the fact that Yoru says something that important and then just goes to sleep shows that number one, Fujimoto is a troll who knows his fans want more about the famine devil and the other four horsemen, but also number two, there's a bigger plot point being set up with the famine devil in the future. However, given this teasing with Nayuta, it makes a lot of sense. There's no need to go full dive with famine just yet, because the major leftover plot point from part 1 of Chainsaw Man was Denji was watching over Nayuta, who has those devilish house rules and has Denji by the balls right now. I swear, I think we might be seeing Nayuta transform into another Makima, but again, she's the control devil, and Nayuta was given to Denji specifically to prevent her from becoming another Makima. This just confirms what I said in the last chapter review. Nayuta is a Chekhov's gun waiting to go off, and it's gonna go off when you least expect it. Now, I think Issa Yume being shown here at the end, eavesdropping, might be a sign that this clown, he's gonna follow them, he's gonna break the rules, he's gonna be used as a safe way to show Denji's messed up living situation with Nayuta. Overall, this was a short but very good chapter. There was a lot of setup. You have more hints that Nayuta is a huge Chekhov's gun waiting to go off. So my chapter question to you guys is, now that we know Denji is safe from Yoru's power, at least for now at least, what do you think the next twist we're going to get is going to be? Will it be Yoru figuring out that Nayuta is the control devil, or will it be something else? While you think that over, click here to watch these other Chainsaw Man videos you see on the screen right now.